Different speakers. You know, it has been an unbelievable information's been shared on different levels. But tonight, this might be the climax of it all. How long have you been waiting, and I've been waiting, to hear about the Stone Steps? Well, tonight, Mike from around the world is going to share with us exactly what it means. Mike, great to have you tonight. Thank you for being a part of this webinar.
God bless you, Pastor Paul. Good to be here.
Amen. Great tonight. All right, Mike, the Stone Steps, the dream you had, and now
Yes.
it looks like it's starting to come together. Share with us, what was the dream and what is happening?
Well, first of all, in the dream, Pastor Paul, it was taken up from the U.S. I could see the USA, specifically the USA. A brown cloud came from the west, and the brown cloud spread out and had tentacles going all over the place. After those tentacles reached the ground, they were going all over the place, I was taken to a city. And in this city, there was a figure standing on these steps, a bunch of people around. People were in the streets. Armed vehicles were in the streets. But the people were, at first, just talking and everything else. But an individual came outside on the stone steps between two pillars. And there were two soldiers standing on either side. And at that time, they were in different uniforms than I'd ever seen before. The vehicles were different than I'd ever seen before, because this dream was back in 2013.
Okay.
So it was a long time ago. But the face of the individual I could capture. In fact, the face of this individual I discussed with just three people. They didn't know exactly who the face was, and all of us thought it was impossible at that time.
Because it was 2013. It was 2013.
That's right.
Okay.
2013, and nothing, there was no, some of the presidential figures and figures that we have right now, they weren't active like that in 2013. Anyway, this guy was escorted down the stone steps to an armored vehicle, a black one. And the people in the streets were angry. There were some people were angry. Some were deeply upset. You could tell that many were emotionally moved internally, or something has shifted inside of them internally. You could hear the shouting, but the noise level started to rise. It started to rise. As this individual was walking to this vehicle, it's like it was taken up again. And I could see the USA starting to shift and change, right? This individual at the stone steps, he was not by himself, because right after that, whenever that begins, right after that, there were more that were going to follow suit with him. But this first one was the big one. That was the big one. That started everything.
Was he arrested? Was this individual had been arrested that they were leading?
He was, you know what? I didn't have a clear picture of the hands. He was escorted down those stone steps. It was almost like he was, I want to say, detained.
Okay.
But that's why I kept saying he was escorted down those stone steps. I know a legal matter. It was involved with a legal matter.
Okay.
Because it was at a place where it was two big columns, or four columns on this building it came out of. And it looked like a government building. Now, ever since, well, let me tell you the rest of it. When I backed off, the people began to fight each other.
Was there a lot of people? A lot of people in the street? Okay.
They were building up. It's almost like when I backed off the U.S., it looked like ants, and they started to shuffle all throughout the USA. First, it began on the East Coast, but then they began to shuffle all throughout the USA. But then, Pastor Paul, bad things started to happen. It was during this time period, right after that time period, that about 50 million died within the USA.
Whoa!
That's a big number, but about 50 million died within the USA.
Do we know what they died from?
Well, it seemed like they were killing each other. things got out of control. It really got out of control. And in fact, it seemed like this fractured how government operates, period. I could see law enforcement. There were certain people in law enforcement that looked like they had been beat up, like they had been, assaulted. Large crowds, to the point where they disrupted several things in the USA. That's when the USA began to segment into 5 different portions. 5 different portions. It separated itself. Well, after that time, after the 50 million perished, they died, 5 missiles hit the USA. That seems impossible. All of it seemed impossible. But 5 missiles hit the USA during that time. And from there, it got even worse. It did. It got even worse. It was a council type of, when I backed off, I could perceive how things were operating. And it was just chaotic. It was very chaotic.
So
it got to the point where a disruption of utilities were in certain places. People would select where they wanted to go based on how they believed things. It was a severe fracturing that went all throughout the USA.
So you're saying that the country was divided into about 5 different regional groups,
yes,
based on how people believed or felt about things.
Yep.
And there'd been a lot of infighting or fighting within regions. Five different sections, 5 different missiles hit the country. 50 million people looked like had died.
Yes.
The individual that was brought down the steps, you say there was others that followed after. Now, I take it not right at that moment, but that they came along at a later date.
Yeah, after. Yep. After.
So
it started a cycle of just a very bad cycle, and it really ripped this country into pieces.
So I guess I'm going to ask the question. We're in a situation now where the former president of the United States they are really threatening to arrest him or charge him with.
Yep.
Is this the man that you saw in this dream?
Well, I'll tell you what. It looked an awful lot like Trump, right?
Okay.
I know it had to be a president.
Okay.
I knew it had to be a president. And I think in this case, the office was the notable part here. It had to be a presidential figure.
Okay.
Now, keep in mind, right after this event, all sorts of, I knew that nothing went back to the way it was. That's when everything was forced. Everything was forced, everything, because it was almost like the climax of something that people had been wanting to do for a long time, and they did it by force.
Yeah.
It was by force. But the people began to rise up. The people were they were implacable. You couldn't make peace with them. They wouldn't listen to anybody. They would not accept authority set over them night and day. Things were happening night and day. At first, it was, in that small vicinity. But then as I backed out from the USA, it took place all throughout the USA to the point of a pretty big climax. It was just not good.
So
then that's when, right after all that happened, that's when some real bad things began to happen all over the place. So it seemed like this kicked off a series of events that are not going to stop.
So, in your opinion, this is a very powerful dream. We had it 10 years ago. It did, and the man looked a lot like President Trump. You know that it was probably certainly a former president or someone who had been in the office, and it probably was Trump. But let's say this. The reaction of the people was not good. People lost all confidence in the government, I would take it. Anarchy broke out, rebellion, and apparently other politicians must have also been later arraigned and escorted down the same stone steps later. It's like
they did. It began to take place with other folks also.
Did you see? Okay, go ahead. I'm sorry. How many more do you think?
Well, It was more than a few, but much more than a few. They were just getting them left and right. It was almost like it was a chain of events that took place, and the people, Pastor Paul, the people, they 100% rejected. They kept saying their country does not exist. That's what they said.
Okay.
The country does not exist, and so a lot of people took things unto themselves, and that's when. It looked like they segmented into these 5 regions. And
wow.
I saw these people, they were walking and they were discussing where they were going to go based on what they believed. And if you went to, specific places, there were specific, I guess, ideologies. So it was like the USA split in 5 tiny USAs.
Yeah.
Throughout the USA, but it was very violent.
Yeah.
Very violent.
Chaos.
And it's
very chaotic. Yeah. Let me ask you, when you had the dream, you was very upset about this, I'm sure. And then you've been watching for 10 years, the evolution of things.
Yes. And you know what? When Trump was elected president, right? And somehow, I kind of called that one based on that dream.
Yeah.
And when he became president, my stomach dropped.
Yeah.
But when he did not have a second term, that was okay with me.
Yeah.
But I knew they were not going to stop pursuing him.
You knew this. And
I knew it.
You knew that he's just as powerful in their minds out of office as he was in office. I mean, maybe he doesn't have the authority to do things like when he was in office, but of the will of the people, the mind of the people, he still has a control. You know what I'm saying? Is that what you're saying? That they can't stand they can't stand the fact that people have this right-wing conservative Christian mentality. They hate this nationalism, America first kind of mentality, and even though he's not in, half the country still believes that way.
Yeah, and they believe propaganda, but I followed President Trump, and when Bill Clinton, when he was in office, Pastor Paul, he wanted the release of agencies' secret documents. He wanted the public to have more info about that. Well, Monica Lewinsky happened after that.
Yeah.
All of a sudden. Well, guess what? President Trump, it was about a week before everybody went on the attack to President Trump, he said, I want all these agencies to take these classified documents that are associated with what the people need to know concerning this UFO topic and everything else. He wanted them released.
Yeah.
Do you not know a week after that, they began to pursue him on every side?
Well, he wanted
every single side.
You're right. He wanted the UFO information fully released. He wanted the JFK assassination fully released. He wanted some of the other areas that have been hidden from the public released.
Yep. Yeah.
And you're saying that's what started this onslaught of he's got to go.
That's right. That's that guy. I'll give you an example of the guy that they show on television. Right, even the footage they show on television of some of these UFOs, that's not real footage, right?
I'm not sure. Oh, really? Oh, you mean the guy, the Navy pilot guy?
Yeah, that they know what that is. They absolutely know what those are, because I'll give you a hint. Back in the 1930s, 40s, and 50s, they had a craft submitted to the patent office just like that. And the Navy took great interest in it. Back to the 40s and 50s. It's the exact dimensions, exact capabilities, and everything else, right? Plus, the ones you see on television that they say are authentic footage from, the gun cams, so on and so forth.
Right.
I know for a fact that a lot of that footage that people are seeing is just not, that's fake footage. So what they're doing is they had to come up with a cover story quick, right? Because there were official documents calling for the release of those papers. And that stirred up It really stirred up military-industrial complex against President Trump. That's what happened. See, he was not only under assault by those who are getting paid from these folks, but other corporations were also starting to stand against him in certain areas. That's why his finances were attacked.
Yeah. Let me ask you, Mike. Now you've told us your dream, and you've had this dream for 10 years, and you've been waiting for this to finally be revealed. Do you have any information now that President Trump is going to get arrested? And if you do,
well, they have 4 separate criminal charges. Again, I don't know what they're telling everybody, but you'll know that they'll have 4 criminal charges. The Stormy Daniels, that's nothing.
Okay.
It really is nothing, Stormy Daniels. What they're doing is they're trying to pin him down. And when they pin him down, then, of course, when a person is indicted, when they're already in that position, you start pulling out other legalities.
Yeah.
Right? Then you've got them. Then that's how you mount the time on the individual.
So you're saying
right?
there's 4 different separate criminal charges that they're going to go at him with, and they're trying to start with the lowest one, the Stormy Daniels one, but when they get him finally arraigned, and they get, because they're using a grand jury, okay, and the grand jury is the one that's going to indict him, basically. And once he is brought in, or once he surrenders or whatever, they're going to set him down, and then they're going to lay the other charges out there and start to say, here's what else we've got, we will pursue. Do you think that's what's going to happen?
They're going to pull everything out. Number one, he has loyalty from at least 46% of the nation.
Yeah.
46%. They can't have that.
Yeah.
No, they're not going to have that. So they're going to have these charges. They're going to find something dealing, some official charges dealing with his forcefulness, his utilizing his power and influence to adjust things, right? To do something unlawful while he was president. That's ultimately what they want. So because they need something big. Because if they get that bigger charge, they can also bring down his cohorts, the ones that were complicit with it, the ones who are basically enemies of the state. He can bring that down too. So now the reason, and because this has me a little off kilter, you could say, right? It's one thing having a dream, Pascal. It's another thing when a guy you dreamt about many years ago.
Yeah, and then you see it come. That's right. Then you're like, whoa, God really showed me this. Right. And now I'm watching the exact thing I saw 10 years ago. I know that puts the fear of God in us. It shows us that we know God is truly watching what's going on, and He's truly revealing it to you. And the Bible tells us that in the book of Amos. He says, for the Lord could do nothing except He revealed His secrets to His servants, the prophets. And you may not call yourself a prophet, but obviously you've had prophetic dreams, prophetic visions, and that you've seen them come to pass, or you've seen them in process coming to pass. So you're kind of shook up by this whole thing. I know that Trump thought he was going to get arrested Tuesday, and of course he was able to, or maybe because he jumped out, he outmaneuvered, but they're not going to let him off the hook, are they?
No, they're going to pursue it. They're going to continue to pursue this. And if it turns out like the dream was, Pastor Paul, I think the body of Christ is in a time that things have been sped up, severely sped up. In other words, the times we've enjoyed, even when stressful, all of it changes now. When this situation, if it comes to fruition, everything changes and it's not going to go back to normal. That's when things really change. That's when some of the heavy things start happening, right? That's when because even right now, and there's something else that makes my stomach drop. It's almost like everything is being held back, but we get hints of so many different things, right? But everything is held back in the heavens. It seems like things are being introduced, but they're not overwhelming, not yet. But when this takes place, right after they got him, the people, they were in an uproar, and it seemed like everything began to happen. I mean, from weather phenomena to cracks in the earth, all sorts of things were happening.
So the
things.
cataclysmic apocalypse really breaks loose after this Stone Step event in America.
Yeah, and specifically because in that dream, every time I have those dreams, I can look at a place. It's almost like I'm being escorted to different places, and you can hear what people are talking about. For example, they didn't know. They were trying to determine what the action would be against a launch, right? Just something as simple as that, a launch. And they had no solution. They had the means to stop it, right? But they did not know how to go forth with it. It's almost like the communication between groups was no longer trusted. They couldn't even trust military commanders. They couldn't. They had to reestablish loyalties again. See, and I'm thinking about this whole thing. If they get President Trump, people are not going to accept the government right now is a legitimate government. All those who follow him, they won't. And they're not going to all react all at one time. It'll build up in less than a week.
Okay.
And we're going to see some major issues come about from that.
When do you think? When
disruptions.
do you think that the Stone Step event's going to take place? And would you give us?
I personally, I think they're trying it. I would probably. I know Monday. A lot of people say, "Well, he's supposed to get it." I said, "No, I don't think so. It's more like I'd give it about 10 days."
Okay.
I'd give it about sometime within 10 days. They're going to try whatever they're going to try. They're going to try
sometime next week. It kind of feel like it didn't happen this Tuesday, but it may happen by the following Friday. That's kind of what I've been thinking. Just before the weekend, late afternoon Friday, something's going to go down. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong, but that's what you're feeling, a 10-day window.
Right. And because now, even though this is unorthodox, I know for a fact they want to force this new system upon everybody, right? For example, with AI, I know that next month, most of the. Have you ever wondered why Facebook gets paid so much, and all these TikTok and all this digital, platforms, they get paid so much? Is because it's important that people believe in a specific way. And so those are checks and balances. They can actually take those social media sites and see exactly how people are believing.
Right.
And they make adjustments in another month, they're going to be redundant, which means some of these companies are going to be absorbed financially by something else.
Is that because of the banking? Is that because of the banking?
Because of AI.
AI.
Everything is maneuvering because of AI. Everything is.
So even the media now, I mean, they're saying that probably it's going to be up to about 80% of all the news articles we read will be generated by AI. They'll print.
You know what? About 40% of what you read now is generated by AI.
Wow.
About 40%. In another month, you will not be able to tell if somebody's talking for real or not. There have been people on television right now who have not gone on television, but people have seen an AI version of that person. And they can type in there whatever they want, or you could speak, but they could present somebody else on a screen that looks just like the president or anybody else. So in a month, people will not be able to trust. They won't.
So they're going to force
on the internet or anywhere else.
They're going to force this new AI system on us in the next 30 days or so, where we won't know what to believe. I mean, I saw the pictures today of the AI arrest of Donald Trump, where he's running from police, or how they wrestled him. I seen these pictures today. It was so real that if nobody said, if all the networks would come on and said, President Trump has been arrested, there was a resistance, we have the pictures, and they just started putting it up, everyone would have believed it. Everybody would have believed it.
You know what that means? That means they can actually do some very nefarious. There's the military industrial complex, by the way, which are corporations, they can really do some damage now.
Yeah.
With AI, because people have already engaged AI, they just don't know it yet.
Yeah.
They weren't like Verizon. Chances are, people weren't talking to real people at Verizon. They were talking to an AI.
Wow.
There's no way a person can tell the difference. It's totally interactive. These are mature systems, but they have they don't have. There are no regulations. The corporations are keeping they're self-regulated.
So, Mike,
right?
let's say next Friday, let's just say in 10 days, let's just say the President Trump is marched down the stone steps of a building of some sort, and maybe that's do you see chaos breaking out in the streets? Yeah,
they will be in the streets. The protests will get larger and larger. Now, keep in mind, some of these folks are they're in power and industry. So that means there'll be disruptions in employment, in people's jobs, in what flows where. This will be some of the blowback from that. They will separate themselves from an illegitimate United States, is what they'll do. And they'll demand his release. Now, when they do this in force, because we're not talking about just people with who don't have resources to really make things bad in the USA. We're talking about folks with resources, with know-how, coordinated individuals. There are countless militias behind this. So a whole host of things that have been quiet up until this point will no longer be quiet.
Yep, their voices will be. The militias will come forward. Some of the wealthy industry leaders may come forward and say, yes, release him, or we're going to do this, or we're going to do that. So, and now let me ask you, will they? I mean, because if it's just Stormy Daniels, I don't see them even holding the guy 30 minutes.
Yeah, it's not going to be just that. Stormy Daniels. If they may try to get him in on that charge, but I personally believe it's going to be some dealing he had directly
when he was president
of the federal government, dealing with governmental affairs. That's what I believe. They're going to catch him on one of those. So I wouldn't be surprised if everybody wakes up tomorrow and they have 2 or 3 charges on him. Yeah. Criminal charges. I would not be surprised.
So what do you think happens at this point, Mike? Let's say the President Trump is arrested. He's escorted down the stone steps into a vehicle. It's all over the news that he's been charged with 3 or 4 felonies while he was president, this is going to get very serious. The people are going to pour into the streets. People are going to demand his release. Folks are going to lose faith in their government. You see a lot of people. You see chaos. You hear a lot of noise level rising. And then you see this 50 million people dying. Is that a month off, 2 months off, 6 months off? What is the time frame on that?
It's almost like it happened in a very short time, Pascal, because things degraded pretty quick.
So did Ryan.
Also know this, there was a change. Here's one caution I got, though. The violence will come, but this time, you know how in past times, it was almost like, God was very patient with people when they did things. He was very patient with people. He was very patient with everybody. This time, though, those who join in with this violence, they're not going to be your average individuals who would do what they do for patriotic reasons. No, we're talking about folks who are coming out of the woodwork. These are folks who they don't like the way things are run. They won't listen. They're not going to hear anybody else. So they're going to be focused on one pattern. But there's a darkness involved, Pascal, because I know that if a person joins in with this violence at this time,
Yeah.
The violence, not anything tactful or not any attempt to salvage the situation, but the violence. If they join in with the violence, mercy is going to be lifted. And that's why 50 million died. It was almost like the hand of mercy lifted from a lot of people every time they did that. Because a lot of this will be like no other situation. This will be a high level hatred involved in this. This is going to be not a good situation.
Does the
Just not a good
military
situation.
stay intact during this? Where does the allegiance?
It was intact. It was broken by way of its commanders because I remember a conversation, they did not know if a certain naval commander was loyal or not. They didn't know. And we had troubles. Troubles sprang up all over the world. If this takes place, I know that other countries will not hesitate to take advantage.
Yeah.
I know also something will happen, according to that dream, something happened with the skies. All this happened in the same period.
So the weather changes? I mean, during this same time?
This was something, yes, it's like everything began to change all at one time. It's almost like this marks the beginning of a process, that a long-awaited process. This marks it. And when it begins, so will all these other processes. Everything started going, it looked like everything started going wrong, which is why it was so heavy, because there was nothing it was just coming back to back. Things were coming back to back.
Does the New World Order or the Beast Kingdom then attempt to make its move to take over the world?
Oh, sure, because there were people were in these, I want to say police uniforms, but they were fully armored. They were everywhere, and they were very forceful. These folks are forceful. These are forceful folks. I could not tell exactly what they were. I was trying to look at the patches or anything to get identification. I could not. I know that the vehicles were military vehicles that were painted black. I do know that. And do you remember back in, 2015, 16, all those 2015, 16, 17, all those military vehicles went to all these police departments.
I remember. It was Jade Helm.
Remember that?
It was the Jade Helm.
Yeah, all that ammunition.
Yep.
All that ammunition. It was a specific type of ammunition with armaments. And to my knowledge, these police stations have not been using them. I remember when didn't Biden try to recall some of that equipment? He wasn't the only one. Obama did too.
Yeah.
Obama didn't quite like that idea. As it turned out, he was the one that did not like that idea. But then he was involved in initiating it. But once they got it, it was there. It was there. So police departments and DHS has been assigned to every single police detachment, every single state trooper attachment. And they have since 2019 on every single highway. There are patrol places, where soldiers can actually go into concrete structures on every single highway, and they can be stationed there so they can have checkpoints on every single highway.
So every highway, there is locations where the police have checkpoints that they can implement.
Yes. Oh, yes. And they're low profile. So it's not like checkpoints you can just readily see. These are very close to the ground, but they're like pillboxes, which is a term used for soldiers who go into a concrete fortified area.
Right. And
that's where they shoot out from. So they were ready for some type of civil defense or containment.
Does citizen containment get used during this?
Oh, yeah. Yes,
Does martial law get put into effect?
That'll be on the state level, because it looked like the federal government lost its command over the states. Is what it looked like.
So you got So in other words, these regions are going to break. Basically, the country tears apart into 5 regions. And governors or some leaders take over each region and starts operating autonomously.
Yeah, that's what it seems like,
and then
because I know that nobody was cooperating during that time, and people were actually siding, going to places that they could actually had the same, had the same ideology with.
yeah, and then they had to figure out ways to get resources. How were they going to get food? How were they going to get water? I mean, everything gets tore apart at this point. It's about survival. The banking systems must be starting to collapse.
I personally believe, Pastor Paul, they're going to push the system on this. Meaning, here's what it means. I know that life as we know it is going to alter a bit, but I believe they're going to push. They're getting ready. AI is a very forceful thing. AI is. In other words, instead of it taking years to set up an infrastructure, it could take a few seconds, literally. I know a lot of things are set up for autonomy already, right? And that AI is in position in quite a few places.
To
and now
implement
that AI modules have gone out to many different places, they can't bring that back again. And AI has this habit of, for example, if you had an AI unit on your computer and they had a mainframe in Switzerland, right? If they ever connected with each other, they can become one in the same unit, and you wouldn't even know it.
So in other words, the AI systems are already out there that they could kick in, and,
Yes, they are.
and the models have already been run of what to happen in the case of chaos or anarchy or a breaking down of a nation's sovereignty. There's AI systems already in play. All right, we're going into Plan B or Plan C. Here's what we're doing, Operation whatever, and it kicks into gear.
Yeah. In fact, I believe that will likely start to take place in a month. In fact, I believe part of this banking system issue has something to do with AI. I do.
So does Trump being Trump? 46% of the people. He's not a globalist. He don't want anything to do with this new world order. He's outside the secret societies.
That's the problem.
You can't kill him, because if you kill him, you've created a major martyr.
That's right. That's the problem.
And you got to get him to give in himself. In other words, they got to squeeze him to where he willingly lets go, and backs down and and stops it. And you don't see him doing that is in this dream.
No, because he has a genuineness for this country.
Yeah, he does.
He really does. And despite of who he is and what he did,
right,
he wants this country to succeed. And so he said he can't stop being that. That's just who he is.
So Mike,
they're not going to get what they want.
Is there any information? Is there any? I mean, you can't divulge classified information, but is there information that you've been aware of, or been made privy of, and not just you, I'm sure, but others that are watching closely this development, that shows you that this event is going to happen?
Yeah.
Okay.
In fact, right now, Pastor Paul, there are a few legal meetings right now. Right? Not. This does not concern Stormy Daniels.
Okay, I understand.
So there's some things happening right now. I know they're not going to give up. They're going to keep pursuing this until they get exactly what they want.
Yeah.
So, and this will start because enemies have been made, and people are just not. Certain people are not going along with the ruling class.
Because
you could say.
The reason I ask you that is because I'm thinking in my mind, there's no way that the military cannot be already putting together models on what is going to happen if Trump is removed from society or from position of power or running for president or from a position of influence, that by force, this is a legal move. This legal move is to do it by force. They got to be already saying, guys, what do? We got half this country really polarized. We need to start putting together procedures of how to handle this. I mean, that's got to be discussed right now.
During his campaign, they worked that out. During his first campaign, that was worked out.
So they already know. But he won. But he won.
That was worked out. Yeah.
This
That
is
was
different.
already
This
worked
is
out.
different. He's won already. He's lost. He says he didn't lose. He never showed up for the peaceful transfer of power, but he flew off on his own and said, and he's coming storming back. He's blaming everybody and says everything's corrupt. He's willing to reveal it all. He's got half the country. He's a huge threat this time to the establishment. Am I right?
Yeah, and that won't go away. Actually, removing him, putting him behind bars, whatever they do, it's not going to make that go away.
No, it won't.
And they cannot change his mind. So,
No.
Having said that, Pastor Paul, there's a, well, you have an idea of where this goes, right? So they also have to get rid of those that are top echelon who are loyal to
Right.
him, right?
Right.
Who want him, because there are people who want him back in power. They want him back in power because he goes against, some people still have a conscience. Some people do.
Right.
And they want him back in power to go against certain things that they see as, not so good for the country. Because it's not so much the people that we see causing damage. And again, these corporations, right, like Verizon and believe it or not, AT&T, they're the same thing as Lockheed, Skunk Works, and some of these other Rand Corporation. You can name a bunch. They're all doing the same thing. They're all doing, and Trump is going to let that cat out the bag. They can't do that.
I see.
One of the major things, Pastor Paul, to keep this UFO thing secret, right? If it was not secret, people would say, well, wait a minute, why are we slaves to electricity, right? Paying all these high bills and things like that. And so they would lose. Power in the industry is responsible for 70% of lots of things that happen in government. If they lose that, they can't survive that way. They can't survive without it. And that's just a kickback, right? Most of that stuff goes into the black budget. And I promise you, most of what people see out there flying around is us.
Yeah, I know. It's not UFOs. Most of it. What it's us. It's secret vehicles and machines and technology that the public have no idea, haven't got a clue it exists.
Like the SR-72 that they thought was dead. That was a plan from the SR-71. That's not dead. DARPA has worked out a lot. They have an aircraft covered by LCD screens, armored LCD screens. So you can't see it. And it also disappears by radar by sending back the same signal it sent out on a lesser signature. And so it fools the radar into seeing right through it.
So
that's ran by mobile quantum computing. It's sitting on an aircraft. These things are on aircraft. So if it was over your head right now, you couldn't see it. And they use gravitic power. They also use, pulse jets and everything else, but gravitic power is the way they're going.
So this
back in the 40s.
So this thing, so if a craft could fly over me, I couldn't see it because they'd be using an LED screen that makes it look like the sky.
That's right. And from all angles.
From all angles.
That would see it, because they have an LCD screen, and on the inside of each cube are 6 little LCD screens inside of each cube. Each cube is, I think you can fit possibly about 144 cubes on your pinky. So we're talking about high definition at all angles. And we're a computer that can actually multiplex and deplex all that information on the fly. There's no way you can see it. The only thing you will see is a blur. That's all you will see. You may look up and see a blur, but
you won't know what
broad daylight.
Yeah,
if you won't know what you saw, you may think it's a little tiny bird or something like that. You won't pay attention to it.
Okay, Mike. So now that we've got this out there, and this is a dream you have, but now the dream is becoming a reality. And we're talking now about Trump being arrested, in charge, indicted, whatever. He doesn't have to be in an orange jumpsuit behind bars. Just the simple fact that they're trying to disqualify him from running for president.
Yeah.
This will means that everything that you have seen and everything you're talking about here now, all this list of stuff I just wrote down is stuff that is not from the dream. This is what you know is going on. This is things that this is the model. This is the preparation for the elimination of Trump from the system and the reaction, the fallout from it, and how to handle the fallout. In your dream, you've seen 50 million people killed. Is it possible that the fallout could be worse or could be not as bad? I mean,
it's possible if you go either way. But of course, the bad thing about these dreams are like a plague. You know, you can imagine trying to forget about it and then something happens.
So let's say you didn't have a dream. Let's just say you didn't have a dream. Just what you know and what you see happening and the things that's being discussed has got you nervous and trembling already.
Well, you know, if I didn't have that dream, I would, because I understand, I understand Jade Helm and I understand Northcom's mission, so on and so forth. So I wouldn't be that nervous. What makes me nervous is that
you had the dream.
We're talking about events beyond people's expectancy. In other words, people are not ready for this. They're just not ready for the changes that are. And if all those changes happen, my goodness, we're talking about more than people changing, but we're talking about the dynamic of the world changing.
Yeah, I was going to say there'll be a new world order. I mean, because America's the strong man. If America no longer exists, if it's broken up into 5 sections that's feuding with itself and no longer, there's a new sheriff in town, probably China, with their evil axis of coalition. Of course, the Europeans will probably fall apart too if this happens. Am I right?
Yeah, NATO will be. They won't survive, right? And I mean, if you look at what's happening, Trump, they have these things they're trying to do to Trump, but at the same time, President Xi goes and talks to Putin. What are the chances? I mean, what are the chances?
What's the chances
of all this happening at the same time?
None. And Macron, vote of confidence, he barely survives, and they're rioting in the streets. And what's the chances? What's the chances of President Xi going to Russia? I mean, at the same time that we're talking about arresting President Trump. That is insanity.
Yeah, so as you know, that has me a little off balance, a little off kilter. You know, it's just because it's eerie. It's eerie because I don't think people are going to be able to handle that. I do know I don't want anybody to slip into that mindset of the world. That's going to be so easy to do during these times. But
So what should we do? Let's just say now. Let's say
people should be reminded that they're not going to go through the same things as the world does. People should have examples of that all throughout their lives. See, when the world was doing okay, that's when Christians were not doing okay. Right. That's when Christians were going through trials and tribulations. That's when we couldn't, there was no relaxation for those who believed in Christ. They had to work out a bunch of things. But now that the world is about to endure what they never thought they would endure, if a Christian, if we can center ourselves in Christ and in the Lord's real principles, right? Because we will reap what we sow, and to handle everything in righteousness, grace and mercy will never leave us. And we're going to have a different plight than everybody else.
So, Mike, when you say that there's 5 missiles hit the United States, 50 million people die, those have to be nuclear.
I don't know if they're nuclear or not, but I do know this. I do know that Putin, and despite what people say, Putin and China have a shared capability, and Iran have a shared capability of getting us. Now, I'm aware of people talking about the TRB-3, right?
TRB-3.
There is a nomenclature that's a bit different. The Triangle aircraft. Here's the issue. We do have a Triangle type aircraft that carries, let's see, 1, 2, 3, I think it has a pod of 4. It's a drone. These are drone aircraft, by the way. It can fly Mach 11.2. Yeah, it's hypersonic, right? They will not put those into service because you have to have a structured chain of command to do that. right?
Okay.
This is going to be a big problem. If the government fractures, which I think it will, if the government fractures, you're going to have commanders out there not willing to verify digital commands.
Yeah.
Right?
Right.
Now, AI is going online, and we have here's what people may not know, and this is not classified, but AI has been in action with our Navy and Air Force, specifically Space Command, the Navy. It's been in action for the last 3 years.
In other words, when you say in action, it's been communicating. It's even been giving direction.
It's been running the show. It's been
AI.
running the show. For example, like that drone, right? That was intercepted over the Black Sea.
Yep.
That's comparable to me blowing a balloon I bought from the cheapest store I could and seeing what somebody else will do with it. That didn't mean anything to us.
Yeah.
We have drones they can't even see. There are air sorties taking place right now, or I'll say patrols taking place right now. These drones launch every 90 seconds. But nobody can see them.
Because they're completely camouflaged. They're completely.
Can't even see them, and they're very fast. Right? They have nobody in them. They're very fast. They're autonomous. Nobody's controlling them. They navigate themselves. They adjust their missions. They do exactly what they're supposed to do. They have a very high service ceiling. They can fly low to the ground at very slow speeds. They have entry points in certain mountain ranges, and they can land on aircraft carriers, and they have drone refuelers. So they don't have to land at all. They can stay aloft for years. So long as they keep sending those refuelers up there, they're good to go. They have something comparable to an aircraft carrier, but it's a modified C-5 Galaxy, where these drones will actually dock with it and do specific things and then go back off again.
All right, so now, Mike, now let's talk about what should the Christians do. Let's say Trump is arrested or he is indicted, and we watch him, even though he may not have handcuffs on, but we see Secret Service and people walking him down the stone steps and getting him in a car, and he's already been indicted, and he's been charged with 4 different felony charges. And that we're going to find out in the news the next day or two, or the next day, what those charges are. And things have started. What should the Church of Jesus Christ, the Americans, do during this process when things?
Well, they're going to have to stand, Pastor Paul. And what I mean by stand is they can no longer afford to sit silent and neutral. Every Christian has a voice. They just don't use it a lot, right? For example, they can write their opposition to every single representative.
Okay.
Right?
Okay.
To every single representative. They can write those same letters of opposition to corporations. They can speak to the people. They can ask for an audience on these news channels.
Right.
The very news channels that the people watch. See, in this case, Pastor Paul, they're going to have to do what they're led to do directly to the people. In order to reach the people, they got to get on the people's platform.
Well,
they're going to be bold enough. Right? Because here's what I believe. I believe we're lights. Right? When a flashlight goes into a dark place, it doesn't matter how dark it is, when that light turns on, that place is no longer dark. So then whatever they're led to do as far as righteousness goes, they have to stand up and do it. They can't sit by and wait till somebody else does it.
No.
Because they are the nation.
So the Christians, churches are going to have to really unite. We're going to have to write letters. We're going to have to call our congressmen. We're going to have to get on social media. We're going to have to try to get on national media. We're going to have to really let our voices be heard, not in a violent way. I don't hear, not to rise up militias. I don't think you are saying that.
No, to be sober and to stand up with that Christian message all over the place. That's a simple reminder to the world of what they, of what this country really is, by the way.
Have faith, have prayer, be sober.
The question is, will they do it? Will they do that? That makes me nervous too, because I know that for the most part, nobody has had to do anything or we haven't done anything like that, right? And sometimes, by way of different pieces of doctrine, it's very difficult to get people together to agree on anything, right? Because somebody wants to be the head of it and this, that, and the other. So we'll have to get past all that. It's going to take, I believe that the Lord will truly have a remnant among all of us people everywhere in every single land. He's going to have a remnant. But this is certainly a time, I also believe it's a time that Christians will be empowered to do things like that. Should they go and do it by faith for the Lord's purpose, right? Not just do it for the Lord's purpose, because the people hang in the balance. And there are people out there, they still need to see somebody else's light. There are people out there, Pastor Paul, they still need to hear you. They still need to hear Israel. They still need to hear things.
Yeah.
And the only way they're going to hear it is if you're sent to them, right?
Yeah.
So there's a work to be done during this time. While the world is fracturing, that's a good time for us to stand up and walk in declarations. The declarations Jesus already made. And to have faith in those declarations.
Let me ask you.
Not walking in doubt, but in sobriety.
Amen. And in faith and in prayer and really, really standing up. One last question here on this, and that is, during this process, do you see America being attacked by other nations?
I do.
Yeah.
I do. Pastor, soon, I often wondered, if Israel is trampled underfoot 3.5 years, I often wonder what in the world happened to the USA. Yeah. Why did we not intervene? And I'm starting to see why. Because we're gonna fracture ourselves. So it's just like our lives. I guess a microcosm of that will be our lives. Sometimes you can have situations in your home that rise up that take all your attention. So much so you can't do what you want to do externally.
Right.
Because the home requires it first. And I believe that's something like that, USA. This could be it. It's got me nervous, but, it could be it. And if this happens, that could be the event that really ties us up where we can't do anything. They will absolutely pounce. They are ready 24 hours a day to take full advantage of a leadership role in the world right now.
Yeah.
When I say right now, I mean right now.
Yeah, I think
that's why we have everything on patrol.
Yeah, I think I saw it I could see it in the eyes of President Xi when he walked into the Kremlin and said, "Come here, Vladimir, you're my little junior now. I'll help you. I will keep you alive. I will feed you. You follow me. You are going to follow my order." You could almost see it. Almost see it. And it's a color.
Iran.
And Iran is another, yes.
If that happens, Iran won't hesitate to hit Israel.
No, they won't. You're right.
They're not going to hit. That the only thing holding them back now is us.
Yeah.
It's our capability to really do something in that country. But if that's all tied up.
All right, let's do this. Let's do this, Mike. We're gonna end this process here. For this is, of course, the webinar, and this will be airing Friday night when we launch the Rebel. I think this was, if there was ever a show that's a cataclysmic apocalypse, you just described it, okay? I don't know how I don't know anything else unless a meteorite or an asteroid hit in the middle of Kansas City and blew the whole country apart. I don't know what else could be worse than seeing this thing unravel, but it gives me a lot to pray about, and I think Friday night, if this event hasn't happened already, it'll give people a lot of reason to pray. And so
absolutely.
Yeah. So let's shut this down and then do a quick 10-minute video for our Patreon channel real quick.
Sounds good.
Mike, I really appreciate everything you did on this broadcast. So thank you.
All right. God bless you.
And folks, let me just say to all of you, I hope you've enjoyed this webinar.